We should be live in YouTube now. Is that a yes?
Yes, you're live.
All right, so we are live on YouTube. Now it's time for me to go and, oh, she is here. If she wasn't here, I would have a problem. Okay, so let me see if I can do this again. I need to record it on the cloud. All right, so perfect. Welcome back to another CryptoVagabonds Q&A. The presentation of today was done with the request of you, the audience. We were talking about futures contract previously, and someone wanted us to make a presentation explaining futures contract. Now, if you are knowledgeable on the matter, keep in mind that we are oversimplifying things here. So if you know about futures contract, you're part of the financial system and an investor, maybe this is not a good video for you, unless you want to explain this to your kids or your grandparents. But keep in mind, things here have been oversimplified so that people can grasp the meaning of futures contract better. So let me get to the presentation. It's here, and let me just get that here. Bear with me for, okay, there we go. And time for me to share the screen. Zoom is a bit different, so forgive me for my still lack of adaptation to the new Zoom. Let me take this off the way, and let's continue to share. Okay, let me know when you can see my screen. Everyone can see my screen, I hope.
Yes.
Okay, so here we are. Just remember that every content across every platform that we produce is for information, educational, and entertainment purpose only. Nobody here at CryptoVagabonds and no content that we produce is to be considered financial, tax, or legal advice. So this crypto Q&A does occur every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And you're also free to interact with us in Clubhouse from Tuesday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Obviously, you can also interact with us here on YouTube, Instagram, and X. So the topic of today is futures contract. Now, the roadmap is the following. We're going to explain first what are futures contracts, what obligation they have to fulfill, leverage, and we're going to be giving my conclusion. Before I go any further, in case you're not going to be watching this whole thing, do not get into futures contracts. You can really get hurt by this. Unless you know what you're doing, do not get into futures contract. I heard a guy once saying, and I believe to be true, you only get into futures contract if you can afford to lose $200,000 and be laughing about it. It's a very dangerous instrument. So futures contracts is pretty much a type of investment, a derivative. And if you do not know what the derivative is an investment instrument that derives from something else. For instance, a gold ETF is an investment instrument that derives from gold. Gold is a commodity, and the instrument will be a security. So whenever you have an instrument that derives from something else, that is a derivative. So futures contract is a type of investment derivative that involves buying or selling an asset, a commodity, something at a future price, a future date on agreed price. So therefore, you have two things. You have the agreement to buy. So you agree to purchase an asset, commodity, or anything at a specific future date for a predetermined price. So what is the origin of this? The origin of this is pretty much agriculture. And whenever someone was going to plant, let's say, barley or wheat, they wanted to secure a certain price for their harvest. So they would have a contract where they agreed to sell so many tons of those grains for X price at the date of the harvest or a date close after the harvest. That way, the producer would have the guarantee that someone is going to be buying that product that he produced at X price. That was the whole origin of it. A futures contract is an agreement to buy or sell something in the future at a predetermined price today. Same thing for the seller position. He agrees to sell an asset at X price agreed today in a future date. That's why it's called futures contract. Now, once you have that contract, you can sell that contract, trade that contract with someone else. So one example here is a baker. Let's say someone is producing a lot of flour in the past, producing a lot of bread. They need to guarantee an X price for flour. So then they have a future contract, and that will protect them from the fluctuations on the price of flour. And you can use that contract to protect yourself against fluctuations on price of anything. So the obligation, a futures contract require both parties to complete the transaction at the agreed price on the delivery date, regardless if the price is profitable or signifies a loss to the other party. They have the obligation to fulfill that contract. That's the whole point of it. Of course, speculators then can use future contracts to bet on future price of assets or commodities like oil, livestock, stocks, and even Bitcoin. You can literally bet on the price of everything. So, for instance, gold futures. An investor, for instance, that expects gold prices to rise, and I'm using prices here of the past. Gold prices are pretty much on its all-time high for a few months now. So, but let's say, for instance, the price is different at a different stage, and someone expects the price to rise from 1,550 to the price of today. What they can do is they can secure the price with a mining company or anyone who is willing to sign that contract, and they agree this is going to be the price that you're going to sell me gold a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever time frame the contract has, 6 months from now, and that contract would have to be fulfilled. Now, if the price drops or if the price goes up, it doesn't matter. The person, the two parties, they have to fulfill that contract. So if another investor expects gold prices to fall, they can short that by agreeing to sell at a higher price. And of course, if the price drops, that person is at profit. The investor is making profit. But the point is, nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. Now, when COVID hit, for instance, in the beginning of the COVID crisis, there was a huge expectation on demand for petrol. Because what happened here on the Northern Hemisphere, whenever winter is over and the beginning of spring, there's an expectation that a lot of people are going to travel, they're going to go on vacation, and there's going to be a high demand for petrol. Because of the lockdown by many governments, there was this avalanche of oil being produced. There were future contracts, of course, on oil as well. And then guess what? There was no demand. Airplanes are not flying. People are stuck at home, unable to live. The demand for petrol did not come. But all this petrol was being produced. The futures contracts were there, and the futures contract on oil went to minus $40. So it's a gamble. It's a bet in the future. Nobody knows what the future holds, but it's a way for you to secure a certain commodity or certain material for a certain price. Now, once you have that futures contract and you start to transact, here's the thing. You may not have the commodity or anything involved. A lot of those future contracts, they get settled just in cash without commodity or any other material being involved. So someone would just pay for the contract in cash in many cases. So there's no necessary a need for commodity. However, if the person, you want the parties demand a commodity, the commodity has to be taking place. They have to come up with a commodity. Now, how you get out of a future contract, that's very simple. You get another contract with the opposing position. So for instance, if you have the obligation to buy a certain product at a certain price in the future date, if you get someone else to sign a contract with you where you have the obligation to sell that commodity to that person at that price, that person is taking the opposing position. Now you have the contract that nullifies itself. Because whenever there's time for you to fulfill that contract, you can get a contract that you sign with somebody else and say, now you need to buy this from this person for that price. So that's a way for you to cash out on a futures contract. You get the opposite position of that contract. So now futures contracts are pretty much standardized and traded on exchanges. As I mentioned to you guys, once you have the contract, you can transact. And that, of course, allows brokers to easily match long and short positions. So now there's a standard on contracts, and they get into the casino, the legal casino of the world, which is the stock market. Another issue, another thing about smart contracts is leverage. So you don't have to invest a lot right now. So when you sign a contract for, let's say, you're going to buy X amount of beans from this producer a year from now, you just need to give a deposit. And that deposit, of course, is not the whole sum of the contract. So you can, with small amount of money, sign contract with a larger value. So for instance, here, just like one example, if you want to sign a contract of $155,000 in gold, all you need to do is put 5% down. So with $7,000 down, you have now a future contract on 155,000, which is pretty much 20 times what you placed. And a lot of people use this leverage to make money by signing contract of different value. And if their bet's correct, they make money. So of course, if there's a bet that you can make with a small amount and you can leverage, of course, there are risks. And that's why I'm saying do not get into this unless you can afford to lose $200,000 and be laughing about it. This is big game in big casinos for big people. So why? Because it can lead to substantial losses. For example, if the price of gold drops significantly, you could lose far more than your initial deposit. And this is one example, for instance, on shorting positions. If you go short, we already know this, there's no limit on how much you can lose, but there's limit on how much you can gain. So be aware of the risks of future contracts if you ever decide to enter this game. Now, future contracts can also alter the risk and return in your portfolio, allowing you to hedge a market risk and lock returns on certain positions. So how does this work? If you need, for instance, a large amount of petrol, you have someone who needs a large amount of petrol, you can make a future contract on petrol, lock the price, and that mitigates you on the risk of the price going up. And of course, it's going to be not as good for you as the price go down, but some people who know what they're doing, they can use futures contracts to guarantee a certain return. A baker, for instance, if you make a future contract on flour, now he knows for the rest of the year, he has this amount of flour that he's going to get at this price, and now he can plan to make breads and expand his business because regardless of what happens to the price of flour, he now had guaranteed a steady price, let's say for the next year or two, depending on how many future contracts he got. He can sign smart contracts of X amount of flour for the several next 24 months at this price. And that way, now he can plan the expansion of his business. At least that price is guaranteed for him, regardless of what happens in the future. The same thing for sugar or any other commodity. So if you know what you're doing, you can guarantee and secure a price of something that you're going to need on the long term, and you can guarantee that price for the foreseeable future or for the time duration of the contract. So now the issue with future contracts, another thing I want to mention here to you guys, the tulip crisis that people talk was the tulip bubble. That was not a bubble. The price of tulips did not go to astronomical numbers. What went to astronomical numbers were the future contracts on tulips. So when most people talk about the big bubble, the tulip bubbles, they're not talking about tulips, they're talking about futures contract. And futures contract, there's no telling where they can go in terms of going up in price or going down in price. So, but one thing that we can estimate is the future prices on future contracts reflects what the market expects the trend to be for a particular commodity. So there's something called the futures curve, which display prices for different expiration dates. I'm going to give an example here. For instance, this is the gold future, right? You can see there's an expectation of the price going up. So if you know the price on future contracts, you know what the market is foreseeing or what the market is expecting to happen with that particular product or commodity. So we can also see here the curve on natural gas, and you can see the cyclical seasonal demand for natural gas. Obviously, there's higher demand in winter, as you can see here. As you approach December, the prices go up. And I think here it's going to go up again because here in the Northern Hemisphere, people use natural gas, diesel as a way to heat their homes. So conclusion, future contracts are complex instruments with many different applications, and investors should seek further education before engaging with them. This is just an oversimplified explanation of what future contracts is, or what future contracts are, how they can be used, but this is far from enough to allow you to enter this game or to be part of this game. Once again, I made this presentation on a request. Someone wants to know what futures contracts were. And again, try to read books on it because it's far more complex than what I could explain here. I hope this gives you a little insight of what it is, at least a simplified view. And if you want to find out more, I recommend you should read some books on the matter. So let's go for a little recap. We talk about what futures contracts were. Of course, oversimplified, you only have 15 minutes. What obligation you have to fulfill on a future contract, the possibility for leverage, and my closing thoughts. It is dangerous. Stay away from it if you don't have the proper education. Now, if you want to find out more about those kinds of things, financial instruments, cryptocurrencies, geopolitics, and you want to be in control of your own money, consider joining the Academy. Link for that on the description below. And with this, I will stop the presentation here and listen to the question that you guys may have for me. Lali, I hope that gives you a brief overview on the matter.
Yes, yeah, it was a good review. It was a good review and a good reminder to beware. So thank you. Yes. Yeah. Good to see you.
Good to see you again too. So, wow. So that was it on futures contract. And again, it's oversimplified. If there's any questions, I'll be willing to take those. If there's no questions, I also don't have a problem calling a day. I have been ill for a few days, so I'm here for whatever it is, questions or no questions. So,
well, I do have a question. I'm sorry you've been ill, and I'm glad you're feeling better. And what commodities currently are most invested in terms of future contracts? I would imagine the metals.
I think it's hard to measure. Like, I would say petrol has always been on top. Petrol, gold. There's future contracts on price of currencies as well. So, Alchemist, are you familiar on the traditional market? What are the number one futures contract? I would say petrol and gold. Aluminum is another one. Let me see here, copper. That's very good on commodity. That's a very good one. We have it here. Energy commodities are on top of the list. So I would assume petrol and natural gas. Lali.
What question did you ask? What were the most liquid futures you said?
No. Which one has most of money? Yeah, most liquidity, most bets on future contracts. It seems to be energy commodities, based on the research just made here.
Yeah, I would assume, commodities. I don't know what one off the top of my head, but yeah, commodities. So, I would assume.
Petrol and natural gas on the top of the list, Lali.
And
energy commodities.
Yeah, I would imagine with how dependent we are now on our smartphones and technology that the metals would be high up there too.
Yeah. So I would say, like, the one thing that the economy needs to function is energy commodities. After energy commodities, I would say copper, iron ore. Those are the main ones. Those are the things I use to measure inflation. So when I try to estimate the inflation in terms of like depreciation of purchasing power, I always look for the price of petrol, natural gas, copper, aluminum, iron ore. Those five things pretty much dictates the price of everything else in our economy. So I wouldn't be surprised that those are the most future contracts. So go ahead, Lily.
So with the two candidates for the presidency trying to outstrip each other on how they're going to be fracking, would that maybe make petrol a good bet, like domestic petrol in the U.S.? I mean, I don't know if you can answer that question because it's asking for advice.
No, what happened is the U.S. is on a bind, right? The U.S. has, because here's what happened with the U.S. right now. The U.S. used to be the largest buyer of petrol from the Middle East. Okay? They were the biggest buyer. They were the largest producer. The U.S. has shifted from a producing economy to a consumer economy. However, that is not true for petrol. The U.S. is self-sufficient in petrol if they want to be. They can be self-sufficient. The issue is once the U.S. becomes self-sufficient in petrol, guess what? Everything becomes, in terms of productivity, everything becomes easier and cheaper and faster with time. Whatever was necessary to extract 1 barrel of petrol 30, 40 years ago in terms of effort is much less now. We're more efficient about extracting petrol than we are 50 years ago. So that means the Middle East also became better at producing petrol. They can produce a lot more than what they could produce 50 years ago. So you have this Middle East, which is the main source of petrol for the planet, becoming better at producing petrol. And when the US was the biggest buyer, let's say, for instance, in the 70s, about 50 years ago, the US could say X, Y, Z for the Middle Eastern countries because the US was the biggest client. If you have a client that consumes 60, 70% of your production, that client has a say on your business.
In other words, use our dollar. The dollar will be that. Yeah.
So now what happened is the US became the largest producer, and today the biggest buyer on the Middle East is China. So the Middle East now has more reasons to please China because China is giving them revenue than they have to please the US. So now the US also has to continue to be the largest producer, so they're not subject to what's happening here, at least not directly. They are subject indirectly, but so that's the issue that the US has now. And I think the US is aiming to be in the same situation as Germany. Germany took steps from the year 2000 until now to go away from petrol and use alternative energy. And today, Germany has to burn coal, and Germany has the highest price of energy on the Western world. So it didn't work well for them. Now, if the West wants to go on the same route, that's the final destination. And I'm going to give a spoiler to you guys. The private sector in the US already started to see this. I don't know if you follow the headlines of yesterday. Google and Amazon are buying nuclear plants. They're building or buying their own nuclear plants. Why are they doing that? Because they're saying we are not able to rely all our silos of computers, right, with the grid that is in the US and in the direction that the energy sector is going. We're actually making a video as I speak now talking about this. The big data centers, they're already seeing they cannot rely on the policies that's going to, because even if in this election, let's say, for instance, this election, Donald Trump wins and he decides to invest on fossil fuel energy. What's going to happen after another president? This is going to go down and something else is going to go up. So the private sector already start to see that the ESG is a direction that continues to be advocate for. They don't rely on it, and they're buying nuclear plants. I have been saying for like ever since I'm online, I'm saying the only way for us to have clean energy is to go back to nuclear. And I think that the private sector had to start to realize that they have ownership of all submarine cables. They need electricity. They own the biggest data center. AI now is going to increase the demand for data center. It's going to increase the demand for energy. And they're like, okay, we cannot rely on the grid and what the government's doing. We're going to do everything on our own. Bill Gates is investigating ways to make nuclear plants safer, at least for 15, 20 years now. So stay tuned. There's going to be a video coming about that, hopefully this week still, about how the private sector is not seeing SG as a possibility without nuclear. And that's why since 2013, 2014, I'm talking about uranium is going to be the future. It's the only way to have clean energy, because the other way is war. If you think the clean energy is wind power and solar power, that is war, massive war. 90% of the minerals needed for solar panel are in China. 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, cobalt and other things we need for the batteries, guess what? Over 60% of that is in Africa. And of what is in Africa, most of it is in 2 countries in Africa, very complex countries for you to deal with.
Congo, right?
Okay, already mentioned. So
yeah,
there you
which
go.
is already a huge mess.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
do we want to have our energy, like globally speaking, under the control of China and some complex countries in Africa? Is that what you want to do?
No, we don't. We definitely
Right.
not want that.
That's the
No.
alternative. Like ESG means massive, massive wars. Massive wars. Like
On top of that, Booth, on top of that too,
But-
like, you know, if you have like this whole ESG thing, people think it's like either or, right? But if you look at the data, it's actually not the case at all. Like if there's nuclear data, or not nuclear data, words are hard, nuclear energy, and you have like other forms of energy like natural gas, you know, fossil fuels, etc. It actually, as ESG has been used more, it actually takes more of the previous energy sources in order to produce the so basically what I'm saying is, as ESG goes up, the other ones go up even more and more incremental percentages. Yes. So it's not either or, it's those like newer forms of energy actually take more. It actually takes more of the older forms of energy in order to produce those things. So it doesn't really make any sense why it would be like, we're just going to ditch everything else and go to ESG. It doesn't make any sense.
So what is
he saying the infrastructure to create ESG would exacerbate the polluting sources?
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
So in order to produce solar panel, okay, I'm going to give an example to you. In order to produce batteries, we need fossil fuels. Okay. In order to produce solar panel and transport everything we need for solar panel, we need fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm.
In order to assemble, ship all these things, we need fossil fuel. So if you want to increase the productivity of solar panel, you cannot do that. I'm just talking about solar panel, not even mention batteries, without exacerbating the demand for petrol, fossil fuels. So if you want to do the transition, the quicker you want to do the transition, the more you're going to extrapolate the demand of the other commodity. Because there's no solar panel manufacturer that runs on solar panel energy. There's you understand?
I mean, in order to produce batteries, in order to produce batteries for this ESG stuff, you need like a lot of like previous energy sources in order to produce that thing. So
I've been seeing
Go ahead, Ali.
Oh, I've been seeing advertisements for a new type of solar panel that it's like a sheet. It's a thin sheet, and it's supposed to be as effective as the thick metal ones. And I'm wondering about that new rollout, if that would be the same case.
Yeah, well, so to make that, I have seen it's a cloth, okay?
Yes.
To make that cloth, you're going to have to plant or to produce some kind of synthetic fiber. If it's cotton, you're going to have to plant it. If it is not cotton, you're going to have to manufacture. It's going to be synthetic. It's going to be plastic. It's going to be fossil fuels. Right?
Yeah.
Now, one thing, I don't have it here. I wish I had it here. Okay. I want to do this, right? Pretend that this is a pair of jeans. Okay?
Yes.
For you to have a pair of jeans, we need 17 countries. Whenever you buy a pair of jeans, the whole jeans requires 17 countries to exist. Because jeans have the metal thing on their back pocket. Guess what? That's one country, that's one thing produced. The button in front is another thing. The zipper, the parts of the zipper is another thing. Then you have the cotton itself, which comes from different countries, about 3 or 5 countries. Now, once you get all the cotton, you have to transform that cotton into jeans. The transformation of that cotton into jeans involves another couple of countries. And then you have to dye everything blue. And just the dye of the jeans is a whole bunch of other countries. So whatever you try to do, it will take several countries. I'm talking just about one pair of jeans. Now, you can take the same thing now and extrapolate for the fiber, which is solar panel. Wow. How many countries is required? Because then you can count the amount of countries and you can count all the shipping that has to go around with merchandise and commodities to produce that thing. And that is all fossil fuel. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So the whole EV is kind of a BS. EVBS. Interesting.
If green energy was a reality, I can guarantee you nobody wants more cheaper energy than the biggest data center on the planet because they're the largest consumers.
Right.
If green energy was really viable, I can guarantee you Bill Gates, Microsoft, and Google would be buying land and filling them with solar panels. They're not doing that. They're going nuclear because they're most efficient. I have made a video on our YouTube channel. One little pellet of uranium can extract like enough, I think it was like for 30 barrels, like there was a few, like dozens of barrels of petrol of energy on one little pellet, like half-inch long. We had
have
that
the
one.
image here.
You have the image.
Yeah, I have the
Show the
image
image,
here.
Scar. We made a video about this on our channel in the past. Let's show the share the screen, show there. Oh, there you go. So 1 inch tall of uranium pellets, okay, is 120 gallons of petrol of energy, 13,000 cubic feet of natural gas here on this little thing. What is more efficient?
Right. Okay. Of course, there's a lot of other, things to be thoughtful about, just like a company that's more powerful than many nations owning nuclear power. There's those kind of considerations too, but
Lolly, to connect the dots a little bit too, if you look at like I remember looking at this like, I don't know, this was like 6 months ago. I looked at the asset managers and their ESG funds, like how much, like how high fees, like how many fees they collect compared to like a normal fund. And like basically the ESG funds are like, I don't remember how much it was specifically, but it was like significantly higher than other like funds. So basically like these asset managers are driving a narrative of this whole ESG thing, and then they're collecting like really high fees for the people that invest in it. It's one of the, it's kind of like that. I don't know the specific numbers of the fees, but they're significantly higher than normal. So like, it's one of those things, right? They're collecting fees on the so.
Like they're the green investors, the green.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, okay. Those funds fees are like significantly higher than the other ones, and like BlackRock and like Fidel, like these guys are making like bank off of basically guilting people into believing that like ESG is like, you know, the environment and all that stuff. So it's just
Yeah,
something there. Yeah.
Here's another
BlackRock
example.
is, go ahead. Yeah.
So just another example. So here you have coal, right? In terms
Yeah.
of deaths for terawatt hour of energy, you got about 24 deaths in coal, and that makes for 36% of the global electricity. Okay.
Mhm.
Greenhouse emissions, 820 tons. So nothing is dirtier than coal. Now
Right.
oil, okay, is 18 deaths for terawatt hour, but it's only 3% of the global electricity.
Hmm.
Okay, so Tesla drivers, your electricity is either coming from coal or from oil. Now, emissions here in tons. Natural gas, which by the way, the US stopped from coming from Russia to Europe. A lot less deaths, let's say 3 deaths, and it's only 22% of the global electricity. Now, emission, 409 tons. Biomass. Now, biomass, I want to explain this to you guys. Most people don't know what that is. So what is biomass? And if you have a fireplace at home, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. If you have a fireplace at home, trees get cut in winter, and you wait 2 winters to burn that wood, because that wood then gets dried. You have more efficient burn from that. That's not biomass. Biomass, for those who are Amazon defenders, is one main source of electricity here in Europe. And what it means is they go to countries like Costa Rica, Brazil, where the trees are, Africa. They cut those trees. They put them in ships without drying them or giving them time to dry. The time that it takes for them to get here, and they start to burn them instead of coal. That's biomass. Sounds very beautiful name, biomass, but that's what it is. So this is the amount of emission, and it's a very inefficient burn because the wood is not dried. It has a lot of sap on it and takes a long time to burn. Now, hydropower, which is here, wind, and then you have nuclear, and then you have solar. So nuclear is the way to go. It's reliable. Another thing people don't know about energy is the following. You can stop sharing a little bit, Cora. So I know a guy whose job is to create an algorithm, some kind of artificial intelligence, to determine when to open the tab and when to close the tab in what degree. What I mean by that? We turn on the light in our houses. There's a meter in the house that controls the electricity. But that electricity comes, most of the cases, in 220 volts. Now, wind, solar, whatever form of energy, are generators of energy operating. Now, here's the thing. There are millions of people turning on their air conditioning, their heating system, their lights, their refrigerators, unplugging the refrigerators, turn on the computer. That creates a demand or reduce the demand for energy. We need an algorithm. We need first a constant flow of energy that can be held back. And then we need a computer to determine how much more energy goes into the grid and how much stays. Because if they overflow that energy and there is no outflow, the whole thing goes kaput. If the whole system is demanding energy and the tab here is too close, the whole system goes kaput. The system can only deal with a certain degree of overload or short load. And there's an algorithm for doing that. Now, guess what? When there is a hydropower, you open the valve, there's more water, there's more electricity. You close the valve, there's less. So you can just open and close the valve, no problem. You cannot open and close the valve on wind and solar. The more intense sun, the more energy is coming. The more intense wind, the more energy is coming, regardless of the consumption here. Because those so-called green energy is not stable. You cannot stabilize that. And that's the issue that no one's talking about. There are millions of waste on that process. Millions per day being wasted per country trying to adjust that. And that's something no one's talking about. Nuclear, same thing. You need more energy, you turn the knob. You need less energy, you close the knob. It's that simple because it's constant. There's no constant wind. There's no constant solar because we have clouds. We have volcanic eruptions. We have more intense sun. We have seasons. A flock of birds flying over the solar panels reduce the intensity. And when the flock of birds pass, the intensity comes back. How we deal with that? Electricity is not as a battery that you put on your phone and everything works fine. There's flows of electricity. And when that flows increase and there's no demand here, the whole system goes kaput. Those things that people are not talking about. Did it make sense what I explained here, or is it too abstract to you guys?
I'm following. I just wonder with technology as advanced and complicated as it is can be, how they can't make the flow of natural energy more consistent just by balancing it out from when it is stronger and when it is weaker. Seems like there'd be some kind of way to distribute that.
So to balance it out on the solar, you have to waste it. You need to find a way to waste that energy. If there's more production here and there's no demand here, you have to throw that away. You can't stop the sun. And you can't stop the solar panels.
Couldn't you gather the excess in batteries?
So I have lived in a van and I had lived on batteries. Here's what happened. On my van, I have a switch. Because what happened is in summer, you produce like 100 times more electricity in a day than you produce on winter. So if you talk about gathering on batteries, another thing people don't talk about is batteries leak energy. There's no enough batteries on the planet to harvest all the solar panel energy that can be harvested. Because on summer, the peak goes really high. You have what? In some places, 16 hours of sun. And then in winter, you have 4 hours of sun. And guess what? In summer, you don't use as much energy, but in winter, you need to heat your house. So you have the greatest demand when the energy is not there. So for me, I have a battery that allows me in my van to go into a cave and spend almost a month there without having to charge my battery. That's how big my battery is. But guess what? In a summer day, after 3 or 4 hours, my battery cannot take any more energy. So I would have to carry 3 vans behind me on battery just to store 1 day of sunlight. It's impossible, and I can never consume it. So those are things that people are talking about. You really produce a lot with the sun, but we store it. If you're going to do batteries, we're going to have a very dirty planet. Because we need energy on winter more than we need in the summer.
Mm-hmm. Well, those battery scientists better get busy. we need better batteries. I have 450 in my Sprinter. You know, and that does get you a long ways, but you know, for a massive grid for a whole city, yeah, it's more of a, I guess it's more kind of micro needs as opposed to macro needs, batteries.
Yeah, it's very complex though. People, I invite people always, you want to find out how complex the world is, go to the light switch on your wall, okay? And from that light switch, you can go 2 directions. You can go from the light switch to the light bulb, right? You turn the light on. So from that light switch to the light bulb, most people have no idea what happens on that short distance. Most people ask them, okay, do you have any clue what happens between the light switch and the light bulb? Like why the light bulb needs to emit light, why the electricity transforms into light? How does it go like from? And that is a very short distance. And it takes a few months for someone to go from 0 to understand what happened from the light switch to the light bulb. I say, okay, now let's go the opposite direction. Let's go from the light switch to the origin of this electricity. Right? That's the other direction. And the one thing that,
yeah.
just a light switch, forget all the rest.
I know, we take so much for granted.
Right? I'm not talking about microwave, fridge, TV screen, computer. No. Light bulb, that's all. No, take the light switch and try to figure if you can ever get from the light switch to the very origin of that electricity. It takes you 2 months to go from zero knowledge from the light switch to what happens to light bulb. And talk 2 months if you take like half an hour a day to study this and find out and be able to explain, right? It will take you years, if not decades, to go from the light switch to the origin of electricity. But I can tell you what's going to happen because I have done that journey. You're going to find out first, hundreds of people have to die daily. Hundreds of people have to die daily for that to happen. The cost of human lives. The amount of trust that there must be in place for that to happen. How badly your government make that almost impossible to happen is a miracle that human beings can circumnavigate all the imposition from the government for that to happen. And you're going to start to appreciate a lot more capitalism in the private sector, and you're going to start to appreciate much less your government if you just go on that journey. And again, just a light bulb. The amount of trust. Trust is the highest and the most productive commodity we have. And you start to realize the amount of brilliant minds, dedication, discipline to make that happen. It's a beautiful journey. I recommend people to do it. Just with the light switch.
Okay, so what you just laid out there begs a question that may take us on a direction that you don't want to go today. But
go ahead. Go for the question.
I'm so curious hearing what you're saying. What you think about the proposition of Elon Musk cleaning up the efficiencies in government. Do you think that is a reality that could actually happen, that he would have the power and be given the power to do that?
Okay, so I'm not sure about the power, but maybe we can make a presentation, have a discussion about this. I spoke precisely about this morning in Clubhouse. The United States of America, the most powerful country in the history of humanity. No one ever came even close to the amount of power and capability that the US has. Not just powerful in terms of war, but powerful in terms of making the world a better place. The world, believe it or not, like it or not, and the entire human race has an unpayable debt to the United States of America for the amount of safety that we have today in the world. And all of that was achieved with one idea: a smaller government, respect to private property, and motivation for entrepreneurship. You can do whatever you want. Here's the land where if you come here and you work hard and you have your discipline, you'll be able to achieve. Those are the principles of the United States of America. Minimum government intervention and appraisal and I'll say the holiness of private property and the individual. That's what built that country. The problem is when you have a very small government, what happens is you have empires being built, empire state building, great companies, Standard Oil, and so on. You have the entrepreneurs, the Wright brothers, Thomas Edison, because the government is saying, I'm not going to interfere. And now you have giants, General Motors, you name it, Kodak, the biggest companies on the planet were in America. Why? Because the government say we're not going to interfere. At one point, individuals in government is like, all of these resources. Let's just take a little bit, no? Let's just go for a little bit. The individuals of government became greedy and they started to inflate that government. And we have not found the solution to that greediness yet. Today, the government is too big and entrepreneurship has to defend themselves against it by creating lobbyists and other systems to defend themselves from government. A government should never have that interference in the economy. The best example, I would say, the two first centuries, not three first centuries of the United States of America. This last century now that we're entering, let's say from 1950s to now, and it's going, unfortunately, to be a disaster because their government is getting bigger and bigger. I think honestly started with the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913.
But do you think Trump putting Elon Musk in the position of, and supposedly giving him the whatever power the executive branch can give a person to do this, the position of making government efficient. I forgot the term they're using for it, but do you think that the executive branch actually has the power to give that power to someone working within,
Okay, I understand your question. So if you want to reclaim America, you need to take away power from government, not to give more power.
Yeah.
So if Elon Musk is going to be there saying, you don't have power over this, you don't have power over this anymore, you don't have power over this, you don't have power. The government should not be the protector of people's decisions and lack of information. The government should only be the protector of individuals whose property has been deprived. So if I go, for instance, and I rob someone else's property, I want the government to intervene. If I go and I physically assault someone else, I want the government to intervene. That's the role of government. But if the government now is going to protect my whole family from cryptocurrencies and scams and this and that, that's not the role of government. If the whole government is going to protect my family from mal-education, malinformation, that's not the role of government. People should be responsible for what they do. The only role of government should be, and which was in the United States of America, the protection of private property and the wholeness of the human life. Today, the United States of America is attacking human life with this thing of abortion. Sorry for you ladies. But the moment you agree to kill a fetus, we have diminished the value of the human life. And that to me is very dangerous. Government should never do that.
Let me restate my question. I'm just curious if you feel that Elon Musk, at this point in time, would actually be able to make government more efficient. Is that possible? Or is the ship so big and moving so strongly that even if Trump gets elected and he puts Elon Musk in that position, can it be done?
It can be done. It can make a U-turn. You guys are not over the cliff yet, but your guys are going on that direction of over the cliff. So I'm not sure.
That's it. I guess that's it. Are we over the cliff?
You're not over the cliff yet. We still are in time for U-turn.
Yeah.
But like I would say, after 2030, I think that you guys are going to be tipping over the cliff. Like you haven't gone from the point of no return.
I think this cycle or this election is like a pretty important one because this is 16 years. This would be 16 years of Democrats out of the last 20. And on top of that, like I think me and Booth both agree, like there's going to be a crisis. Like the next presidential election there's going to be a crisis. And the question isn't whether or not the crisis is going to happen. The question is who's going to be in charge there when it does happen. Because if there's a Democrat in office, I think what's going to happen is they're going to blame capitalism like they always do. And then they're going to enforce other policies, which is that's probably going to be like, okay, well, America's basically like off the cliff at that point. Because then you're just going to enforce more like, strangleholds on the private sector. And then America's going to almost not be like it was. It's almost going to be like a completely different thing. Whereas if Trump is in office, I think he's not going to approach it in that way. I think he'll make it a little bit more. He'll be a lot easier on the capitalism side, and he'll probably be more equipped to handle. This is my opinion. Like he'll be more equipped to handle like the situation for America in the long term. So that's where my head's at in terms of this president. It's like who's going to be able to handle the crisis correctly, so that the future of America doesn't become like what it should be, right? So.
And on Trump's defense, look, I'm gonna be very honest here. I don't think, and this is my confession here, I don't think I can be friends with Donald Trump. I want to make this very clear. I'm not like someone who loves Donald Trump and he's my idol. I want to be able to shake his hand and be his friend. No, I don't think he's the type of guy that I can be friends with. However, he's, to me, in my view, is a better decision for this presidency. Last presidency election between Biden and Donald Trump, the same thing I said. I said, listen, I don't like the guy. I really don't. But I think he's a better choice. Because what happens in the US, you have two, I would say, socialist parties. I don't think the Republicans are capitalists. I think they are socialists. It's different place on the spectrum. Republicans tend to spend on defense outside. Not so much war like Biden, defense outside, and they tend not to spend so much in being the father and mother of the population. Democrats are different. Democrats spend on defense and attack outside. You can see that the invasion in Ukraine paused during Donald Trump's years. The invasion started in 2014 under the Obama administration. I know because I was here in Europe and I had friends from Ukraine. The invasion began under Obama administration because of a coup that they did in Ukraine and took down the Ukrainian president. The invasion started there and continues to go. When Donald Trump took power, months after that, the invasion paused. Putin just paused the invasion once Donald Trump took place. When Biden administration came, the invasion continues, and you guys see what's happening now. Now, Donald Trump did not cause any major spark of war in the world. The world became a more peaceful place with the Abrahamic Accords. Now, the Democrats, they like to take care of their own as the big government mom and daddy, and they like to attack and defend outside. That's the issue that I see historically speaking. So one spend more than the other. Both are going to increase their debts. None of them are going to correct the debt curve. The US is going to continue to have massive amount of deficit. The question is the speed. The problems go at a faster pace under the Democrat administration than it goes on the Republican. Both are going towards a cliff. The question is at what pace. Now, if Donald Trump's talking about reducing the government, I believe that because I know people in Brazil that had business in California, and they were closing down their doors, and they were coming back to Brazil because they couldn't take the taxation in the US. Donald Trump took power, and by the way, they did not vote for Donald Trump. They were against Trump, but when Donald Trump got elected and cut off some federal taxes, they decided to continue in the US. Today, they want Donald Trump back. So whatever leader in government tries to diminish the power of government, that's positive. If you're going to increase the power of government into private matters, that to me is a huge problem. So again, I'm not saying, I will repeat that, I don't like Donald Trump. I don't think I can be friends with him. I have many problems with the guy. The United States of America needs a powerful leader. Look at all the wars and conflicts that we have. I heard a video on X. It's going to sound ironic. And I can tell you this. Chinese people, Middle Eastern people, they're not going to listen to women. Say whatever you want to say about Chinese, they're not going to listen to women. Xi Jinping is not going to listen to women. I don't care who it is. Queen Elizabeth. Saudis are going to listen to women. A woman's going to go to the Saudi countries and is going to talk to the emperor of Saudi Arabia, and he's going to pay attention to her. This is the reality. I'm not saying it's right. Show me a Saudi king that's going to listen to a woman. Show me a Xi Jinping that's going to pay attention and listen to a woman. Show me a Vladimir Putin that's going to listen to a woman. Those guys are not the West. You think Iran is going to respect a woman?
Reason and respect is different.
Huh?
What did I just walk into? Holy crap.
What, Cora?
The listening and respecting is different.
Yeah, listeners.
You're, say-
Go
you're
ahead.
saying they won't respect her?
No, not as a leader of a country, not as someone who's going to impose fear on them, not someone they're going to respect and fear as a leader. The king of Saudi Arabia, a woman's going to say to him, stop this, don't do that, and he's going to listen to a threat of a woman.
Boof, I will say this though. I will say that in the Middle East, it is shifting a little bit though. You got to admit, it has shifted. It has gotten more like that over time. They've just been slower. You know. They have.
Erdogan, the Saudi king, Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, the supreme leader of Iran. Should I go? I'm just saying, I'm just saying, it's not going to represent America as a strong country. That's all I'm saying. And there's a lot of turmoil on those
You're
countries.
not wrong about that. You're not wrong. I'm just saying, that that trend, in the Middle East, that's not. It's slowly deteriorating. It's kind of like they're kind of becoming more like the West in that way, over time. A little bit.
A little bit.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Vladimir
I
Putin is
agree
gonna
with
go.
that.
Vladimir Putin is gonna go to the Russian population and say, "I changed my plans. I spoke to Kamala Harris, and not a good idea." Xi Jinping is gonna go to his population in China and say, "I wanted to go on this direction here, but Kamala Harris told me to go in a different direction, guys. I need to listen to her."
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
all
when you
messed
put
up,
it
dude.
like
It's all
that.
messed up.
Yeah, the leaders.
Yeah, that's all messed
Come
up.
on, guys.
Well, actually, some countries have actually gone backwards in terms of women's rights quite a bit. Like I saw some photos of college students, female college students in Afghanistan from a few decades ago, and they were almost wearing miniskirt. I mean, they had dresses on like we wear in the West, and they had a bunch of books they were carrying and laughing and didn't have their heads covered. Some countries have gone backwards in terms of women's rights.
Yeah. Erdogan is going to go to the Turkish population and say, "Listen, guys, I had this thing in mind, but Kamala Harris talked to me and no." I'm just saying, I don't see
know.
that
I
happening.
Well, I mean, let's be honest.
Hey,
Kamala
you guys,
Harris
you
doesn't
shouldn't
run-
be
they're not
laughing. You
running
shouldn't be laughing. You should be crying, not laughing.
I don't mean that
But Boof,
insultingly.
let's be honest. They're not talking to Kamala Harris. They're talking to the people who are in charge of Kamala Harris, right? They're not,
But Ali, you're a woman. Put the laugher aside. You understand what I'm saying? This is the reality of the world. I mean, you can't change that overnight. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, in my lifetime, women had the right to have their own bank accounts and credit cards. In my lifetime, in my grandmother's lifetime, she got the vote. I mean, yeah, it's a sad reality that we should be crying over, not laughing, gentlemen.
No, but you understand? Do you see Vladimir Putin going to his population and saying that he changed his plan because of Kamala Harris?
Yeah, it's very sad that's the world, but that is the world, and it's very sad.
That's all I'm saying. Okay. So the biggest threat today is Iran having nuclear capacity shortly, Russia, Xi Jinping. Those countries, those leaders are not going to be able to listen to a woman and hold face before the population. That's a reality. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's positive. I'm just saying this is what I see happening. That's all.
I mean, yeah, I don't know, Boof. I don't know. I mean, I don't think that. I don't think China would even try to fight. I mean, I don't care if Kamala is president. I mean, I don't think that they could win against. I'll just be frank. I don't think that they would win against America if they fought a war. I think America would beat them easily.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would prefer US to have a strong leader that demands some fear and respect from nations that are lurking on the curve and on the dark, and that's all I'm saying.
I know what
Yeah, no, I
Kamala
agree.
can
No,
do.
we're on the same page.
What?
I'm
What?
just saying,
What?
like,
What?
She walks into those meetings with her finger on the button, you know, saying, I may be a woman, but I have my finger on the button,
But-
guys. So, you know,
Yeah.
get in line because I'm the one with the finger on the button. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for being here, and I'm glad you can end with a little bit of humor. So, and that's the way I see it. So appreciate you guys for being here. I hope I answered you, Lali. You guys take care.
You more than answered.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye bye.